I warned my fiancée that her closeness with her best friend was inappropriate. She called me insecure and said she would always choose him if I forced her to decide. I canceled the wedding. 4 months later, she came back pregnant and crying. "Hi, my name is Nick. I'm 31, and I run a custom motorcycle shop in Austin. Since I opened 3 years ago, the business has only grown. 6-figure annual revenue, features in specialized magazines during Bike Week, all of it. I lost my previous job as an engineer, but I used the severance pay to rent an old garage and turn it into something real. The first year was a nightmare, but now even celebrities travel just to have me build them an exclusive bike. The shop has an industrial vibe that some people love and others don't so much. Exposed brick walls, vintage signs, classic rock playing in the background, and that constant scent of motor oil and hot metal. I have 2 full-time mechanics working with me, reliable people who know what they're doing and don't get involved in drama. Roy is an old-school Harley expert, while Ethan is younger but a genius with sport bikes. 2.5 years ago, I went to a charity auction for wounded veterans. It was there that I met Eleanor, 27 years old. She works as a public relations manager at a tech company downtown. Blonde, athletic. She drives a BMW that her dad bought her. She studied at college with everything paid for by the family. You know the type. The event was held at a fancy hotel with a strict black tie dress code. They were auctioning off golf packages and gourmet dinners as if they were sacred objects. I bought a table because my business was doing well, and it seemed like a good networking opportunity. Besides, supporting veterans was the right thing to do. My father is a retired military man, and I respect those who served. Eleanor showed up in a short black dress, looking around at everyone until she saw me. I was wearing a custom suit. I looked good. I won't deny it. She came over and started talking. The truth is, she was out of my league appearance-wise, but it was clear something about me interested her. And at that time, my shop was already somewhat known, so I guess she liked being seen with the bike guy at her corporate events. My best friend James was with me that night. He's one of those guys who can give you the truth unfiltered and still make you laugh. He's 32. He works in construction management, built like a concrete wall, but with the sense of humor of a professional comedian. He warned me from the start. That girl has less authenticity than a wrestling show. You should have listened to me. But Eleanor was beautiful. She showed interest in my work instead of being embarrassed by it, and at first she had no problem getting her hands dirty at the shop. The initial stage of the relationship was pretty good. She would come after work with trendy food. She'd sit and watch me fix bikes and even dared to polish the chrome on an old panhead I was restoring. The first time I introduced her to my father was priceless. He's 65. He was a mechanic in the Air Force and doesn't hold anything back. He says what he thinks, whether you like it or not, and he's usually right, which makes it worse. She's pretty, son, but be careful. Girls like that have expensive tastes and even higher expectations. Make sure she's with you for the right reasons. He wasn't wrong. Fast forward. 10 months ago, I proposed. I spent $8,000 on a ring that she had been hinting at for months. The wedding was scheduled for next month. The whole process of buying the ring was a crash course. 3 weekends visiting jewelry stores while Eleanor explained the 4 C's like a university professor. She had photos of every friend's ring on her phone like it was a competition. That should have been a red flag right there. I remember my father's reaction when I told him the price of the ring. $8,000. Son, I bought your mother's for $300 in '87 and she's still wearing it 35 years later. She cried when I gave it to her, not because of the size, but because of what it meant. But here comes the strange thing. In 2.5 years of dating, Eleanor never once mentioned a guy named Trevor. That's his name. Supposedly a friend from college, not a single time. And believe me, Eleanor talks a lot. She's told me the details of her yoga instructor's divorce, her office mate's love dramas, and even her hairdresser's family issues. But Trevor? Never. Until 2 months ago, out of nowhere, she mentions that her college friend is moving to Austin for work. The guy shows up, and as soon as I see him, I realize the profile. 29 years old, over 6'1". He looks like he stepped off a magazine cover, works for a famous consulting firm, drives a new Porsche, and probably spends more on face creams than I do on clothes in a year. He's one of those consultants who charge millions to tell companies what they already know. And it wasn't just his appearance that made me suspicious, it was how Eleanor reacted when she saw him. I've seen my fiancée excited, but this was different. She leaped to hug him at the airport like a fan seeing their idol. And the introduction was even worse. "This is Nick," she said almost disinterestedly, as if I were the accountant. Trevor gave me a weak handshake and immediately started talking to her as if I wasn't there. He pulled out his phone, started showing her photos, an inside joke about spring break in Cancun, pictures of both of them on the beach. Her in a tiny bikini, him shirtless, showing off his gym physique, both posing like a couple in every image. "Remember when we went parasailing?" he asked her. "Oh my God, yes, that was amazing," she replied excitedly, leaning over him to get a better look at the screen. I was standing there, wondering how she had never mentioned that trip with someone like this, let alone that those photos existed. James had driven me to the airport that day because my truck was in the shop. He saw everything too, and with just one look, he told me what he thought. He has the ability to tell you 1,000 things without opening his mouth, just with a raised eyebrow. I tried to stay calm. I thought maybe they were just catching up, but after 45 minutes of being an invisible accessory, while my fiancé laughed like a teenager with another guy, I reached my limit. When I tried to strike up a conversation with Trevor about his job, he started bragging about his 6-figure salary and how well his company treats him. First-class flights, 5-star hotels, unlimited expense account, all adorned with his luxury watch and fake smile. Before I could say anything about the success of my business, Eleanor jumped in to offer him our guest room. Yes, our room. In my house. The same house that I bought and that I pay the mortgage for. When I asked her if it wouldn't be more appropriate for this guy to stay in a hotel, like the Four Seasons, which seemed more his style, she immediately cut me off with, "Honey, it's fine, it's just for a few days." I couldn't argue anymore. On the drive back home, my friend James, who was with me, didn't hesitate to express his thoughts. That guy has the loyalty of a rental car, and he didn't even try to hide it while looking at the bartender when your girlfriend was talking to him. I hadn't noticed that, but James sees everything. Soon after, Trevor, that supposed friend, settled into the guest room as if it were his own. He used my gym equipment, emptied my pantry, and even dared to move the living room furniture because, according to him, it didn't favor conversation. My gym is in the garage. I transformed it myself. It has Olympic weights, a punching bag, a squat rack, everything set up piece by piece over 2 years, and he treated it like a public gym. He didn't clean anything, left his dirty bottles in the kitchen, and changed the settings on my machines. But what really topped it off was the living room. One day, I came home and saw the leather sofa in a different position, pointing toward the kitchen instead of the TV. He had replaced the coffee table with some kind of modern sculpture that Eleanor bought without consulting me. My Harley motorcycle posters, which had been there for years, he had taken down because they were apparently too vulgar now, facing abstract paint smudges with French titles. I approached Eleanor, trying not to explode, and asked her, "What the hell is going on here? Who gave your friend permission to change things in my house?" She looked at me annoyed and whispered angrily, "Keep your voice down, Nick. He's used to a more sophisticated aesthetic." Sophistication? Then let him rent his own apartment. But Eleanor didn't like my answer at all. She defended him immediately. I started noticing a clear change in her. Everything I did was no longer enough. The decor had to be more refined. My drinks were an embarrassment, and my clothes needed elevating. She started buying me shirts and pants that looked like they came out of Trevor's closet, all from expensive stores like Nordstrom. I told her I already had clothes and that I dressed my own way. She replied that we needed to live up to our new social circle. New social circle? Since when did we have one? And why did I have to change to fit into it? Every time they were together, they spoke in code. Inside jokes, college anecdotes, spring break trips, names of people I had never heard of. I sat in my own living room feeling like an intruder, and when I tried to participate, Eleanor would cut me off with, "That was before. You wouldn't understand. Things were different then. Excuse me for not going to an elite university paid for by Daddy's money. I was busy building a life, not squandering it on vacations, and every story between them sounded more like past dates than simple friendships." Gala dances where Trevor was casually her date because there was no one else. One night, James came to visit. Eleanor and Trevor went out for one of their typical night walks. Just the two of them, like every night, while I washed the dishes or went to the garage to work on a bike. When they left, James looked at me in silence and said, "I've seen pathetic things in my life, but yours takes the prize. They are taking control in your own house. What are you waiting for? Kick 'em out already." The last straw came the following Sunday when my father came over. We have a tradition of grilling meat and working on a project together every 2 weeks. It's something I value very much. He walked into the living room and saw Trevor sprawled on my sofa, dressed in designer clothes, eating as if he owned the place, while Eleanor treated him like a guest of honor. He stood silently watching for 30 seconds before speaking. "Nick, who is this? The Ken doll?" Trevor tried to introduce himself with that artificial consultant attitude, talking about his exciting career and how grateful he was. My father simply nodded coldly and walked out to the garden. And right there, I knew he didn't like him at all. When my father doesn't say much, it means he doesn't like you. Once outside, he told me bluntly, "That young man isn't looking for an apartment. He's already found one, yours, and your girlfriend is already acting like she's moved in with him. I'm telling you as someone who's been married for 35 years, that's not friendship. That guy is after her, and she's letting him." And he was right. Everything spun further out of control when Trevor started getting involved in the wedding planning. He gave his opinion on everything: flowers, menu, groomsmen gifts, even the music. Eleanor praised him nonstop. She said he actually knew what she liked more than I did, someone she'd been dating for over 2 years. The music thing was a direct slap in the face. Eleanor and I had already chosen a mix of classic rock and some country, songs that represented us, but Trevor said it was too basic for the venue. He made a new list with indie jazz that wouldn't make anyone dance. He used my own computer to show it to me. "Trust me, this will set the ideal atmosphere. Your guests will thank you," he said while browsing his Spotify premium. But the real limit was reached at the cake tasting. Yes, he came to that too, because of course he knew Eleanor's refined palate, the same Eleanor who for over 2 years ate burgers, tacos, and pizza like any normal person. But suddenly, it turns out she needed Trevor's guidance to choose a cake. When one was finally chosen, the one he proposed, naturally, Eleanor looked at him with adoration and said, "You always know exactly what I want." In that moment, I understood that she had handed him a place that should never have been his, that this guy, who had been there for weeks, understood my fiancée better than I did, who had been by her side for years. When I asked why Trevor's opinion was worth more than mine, Eleanor didn't hesitate to call me insecure. Insecure? Simply for wanting my fiancé to take my thoughts into account? "Trevor has really good taste," she said. "He knows what works for events like this." Our wedding was no longer an intimate celebration, but another production where Trevor had to exert his expertise. When I told James what had happened with the cake, he almost spat out his drink laughing. "Are you telling me the Barbie doll asked Captain Consultation for approval to choose your wedding cake? Brother, she's not marrying you. She's just holding on to you while she decides if Trevor is going to make the next move." And that was exactly when everything began to fall apart. Last week, I was working late at the shop on an engine I'd been tuning for days. It was for a special project, a '77 Harley Panhead that a client wanted fully restored to the last detail. A mechanical jewel, but the engine was destroyed. I had spent weeks fine-tuning every component. Working on it gave me peace. I had music on in the background, classic rock, loud enough to enjoy, but not distracting. I left the garage door open, luckily, because that's when I heard them talking in the backyard. They thought the music would cover their voices, but after so many years listening to engine noises, my ear has become fine-tuned. What I heard froze me. "Are you sure you want to get married, Eleanor?" a male voice asked. I immediately stopped using the impact wrench. It was Trevor. "Nick is a good guy," she replied, but her tone was uncertain, as if she were trying to convince herself. And then came the phrase that revealed everything. "Good guys finish last," he said. "You deserve someone who matches your intelligence, your ambition, your class." There was the hidden message Trevor had been hinting at for weeks. I wasn't classy enough. I wasn't smart enough, ambitious enough, or socially appropriate for her. Eleanor's voice faltered. "It's complicated. It doesn't have to be. You know there's always been something between us." 6 years of supposed friendship, and Trevor had always been waiting for his chance, playing the faithful friend while presenting himself as the superior option, silently sabotaging our relationship. He had been building it up all this time. While I was falling in love, he was still there, waiting for his moment. I turned off the music and went into the house, but sleeping was impossible. The next day, I called James as soon as the sun rose. "It was about time the cuckold captain showed his true intentions," he said as soon as he answered. "What did you hear?" I told him everything, word for word. "That guy confessed his entire plan to you. Now the question is, are you going to do something about it?" And yes, I decided I couldn't stand idly by. That same afternoon, I made a decision. I told Eleanor it was time for Trevor to find his own place. The wedding was just 3 weeks away, and we needed to focus on us. When Eleanor came back from work, I dropped it straight on her. "Trevor has to go. We can't focus on the wedding while he lives here." Her reaction was immediate and explosive. She called me selfish for kicking him out just as he was starting his new life in the city. I reminded her that he had a 6-figure job and could easily afford an apartment. Then, she threatened to postpone the wedding if I was going to continue being so jealous and controlling. "He's my best friend, Nick. How can you be so insensitive?" So there it was. Was she going to postpone our wedding for Trevor? "Would you postpone our wedding for him?" I asked. "I would postpone it because you're acting like a controlling paranoid freak." Paranoid? For not wanting another man to live with us? For asking my fiancé to prioritize our relationship? I asked her a clear question. "If you had to choose between him and me right now, what would you say?" She went silent, a silence that lasted too long. I could see her processing the situation, searching for an answer that would allow her to keep both. "That's a ridiculous question. It's simple. If you had to choose now, who would you pick?" "I shouldn't have to choose between my fiancé and my friend. But if you had to..." And she fell silent again. I saw the exact moment on her face when she realized there was no easy way out. Trevor has been in my life longer. 6 years versus 2.5. And just like that, Trevor won. It felt like a punch to the stomach, but at least it gave me clarity. Eleanor had already made her decision weeks ago. I was just the last to find out. I called James as soon as she stormed out in a fury. "She chose him," I told him. "Of course she did. The princess wants a prince, not a mechanic," he replied. That day, I spent my time making calls. I started with my lawyer. I wanted to know where I stood legally. In Texas, engagement rings are considered conditional gifts. If the wedding is canceled, the ring goes back to the buyer. Good to know. Then I called the venue, the caterer, the band, the photographer. I canceled everything. I lost a few deposits, but I saved myself a bigger mistake. The venue manager was understanding. He told me cancellations are more common than one might think. Better to lose a deposit than pay for a wedding with the wrong person. The caterer wasn't so kind. I lost $5,000 because they had already ordered special products. The photographer, on the other hand, offered me a session with my bikes, which, to be honest, sounded excellent. Next, I called my friends James, my brother Liam, Roy from the shop, and my cousin Rick, who works in private security. I asked them to come over that night. I was going to need witnesses. Liam drove from Dallas. He's 2 years older than me and has zero tolerance for drama. Roy closed the shop early and brought refreshments. Rick arrived in his guard uniform, imposing as always. James was the first to show up with a cooler full of energy drinks and his biggest grin. "This is going to be better than any pay-per-view show. You're finally kicking out those parasites." When Eleanor and Trevor returned from another dinner that, by the way, I was not invited to, I was already waiting for them in the living room with my friends and some documents. The look on both their faces as they walked in was priceless. Trevor turned pale. Eleanor, red as a tomato. "We need to talk about what happened this morning," she began. "Actually, no," I cut her off. "Trevor, you have until tomorrow morning to get your things out of my house." "What?" Eleanor said, raising her voice. "And you too. Here is your 30-day notice of eviction." She took the papers as if they were written in another language. She looked at me, then at my 4 friends sitting in a row like a tribunal, and when she realized I was serious, her face exploded in fury. The rest happened as I had foreseen. Eleanor argued that I couldn't take the engagement ring. I explained the Texas law on conditional gifts. Trevor tried to calm things down until Rick offered to help him pack. And with Rick standing there, 6'3", 250 lbs of muscle, and 20 years of security experience, no one argued too much. Trevor looked at him once and for some reason decided the most prudent thing was to cooperate. Eleanor, on the other hand, tried to justify everything, insisting that it was normal to have friends of the opposite sex and that I was being an irrational controller, but the reality spoke for itself. She had preferred Trevor over me. She postponed our wedding for him and took his opinions as absolute guidance for every detail, from the flowers to the furniture. "The ring, Eleanor," I said calmly. She hurled it at me in rage. I caught it in the air, as if all my years of tuning carburetors had prepared me for this. "Take your ridiculous ring, but don't come crawling back when you realize what you lost." "I know perfectly well what I'm avoiding," I replied without hesitation. James, as always, couldn't contain himself. "Give it a week. I bet you anything they upload their first photo together as a couple before Friday." The next morning, Trevor was gone. He had left with his designer luggage and facial care products back to his luxury hotel. Eleanor spent the day crying and stuffing things into boxes. Meanwhile, my guys made sure she didn't accidentally break anything while she was leaving. Roy and Ethan even helped her load her belongings into the moving truck. By noon, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. It was an endless parade. Her parents, her sister, her bridesmaids, even some co-workers. Everyone had an opinion about how horrible I had been for humiliating Eleanor like that. Her mother was the first to call, screaming that I had embarrassed her family and ruined her daughter's happiness. I tried to explain that Eleanor had chosen another man over me, but she hung up before I could finish. Her father called an hour later, calmer, but equally annoyed. "Sir, I didn't humiliate anyone," I told him. "I just decided not to marry someone who clearly didn't want to marry me." My father was next to me during most of those calls. He just shook his head and muttered things like, "That woman has a lot of nerve. These people live in another world." Then he said something that stuck with me. "When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Your fiancée showed you exactly who she was, and good thing you noticed in time." The bridesmaids started sending group messages saying I was a controller and manipulator, unable to accept that Eleanor had male friends. For them, the problem was me for not trusting her friendship with Trevor. But a friend doesn't live in your house, redecorate your living room, or tell you that you deserve better than your fiancé. Meanwhile, Eleanor uploaded posts to Instagram about toxic masculinity and insecure men who can't tolerate a woman with character, building a narrative where she was the victim. According to her version, I had kicked her out for having a friend, for not tolerating her independence. The comments were divided. Her sorority sisters defended her, but those who knew the truth confronted her. Several mutual friends wrote to me privately to ask what had really happened. James couldn't stop laughing as he looked at her posts. "Look at this one," he said, showing me a screenshot. "Sometimes you have to walk away from toxic people." "Yeah, good thing you walked away on your own, Queen." 5 days after leaving home, where did Eleanor end up? In Trevor's new place downtown. What a coincidence. Trevor had apparently gotten a furnished apartment in a luxury tower, and Eleanor moved in temporarily, according to her, while she figured out her next steps. But her social media told another story. They started posting photos together with phrases about the importance of true friends in difficult times, and how lucky they were to have each other. The images became increasingly romantic, although they continued to maintain the lie that they were just friends. The poses, the body language, everything said otherwise. James sent me the screenshots, thinking it would bother me, but the truth is, I felt relief. Seeing their show in real time only confirmed that I had made the best decision. "Read this," he told me one day. "Grateful for those who truly understand me. Sure, friends who understand each other naked." My father was more direct. "Son, actions don't lie. Those two are together. They probably already were, and you're better off without either of them." 3 weeks later, right on the day that would have been our wedding, I met Julia. I was at the gym, where I had been working out more often since the breakup. It helped me manage stress. And besides, I had more free time now that there was no wedding to organize. Julia was a physical therapist, owner of her own clinic. I met her while she was deadlifting in the rack next to mine. She had impeccable technique and lifted more than many men there. When she noticed I was watching her form, she smiled and said, "Are you evaluating my technique or just being a little weird?" "Your technique," I replied. "Most people lift wrong with their backs, but you know what you're doing." After the workout, we went for coffee. I told her about my motorcycle shop, and her eyes lit up. "That's interesting. It's true that Harleys are harder to handle than sport bikes." She had no hang-ups about manual labor, just genuine curiosity and respect. When I offered to teach her how to ride, she accepted without hesitation. Julia was completely different from Eleanor. She had her own income, her own business, and clear goals. She didn't need anyone to support her or validate her decisions. On dates, I insisted on splitting the bill until I slowly convinced her to let me pay. We hadn't formalized anything yet. I wasn't looking for an immediate relationship, but we enjoyed spending time together as friends. A month later, she met James and my father. James didn't take long to voice his opinion. "Brother, she looks at you like you're the only one in the room, not like someone she wants to mold for marriage." "No, we're just dating," I replied. Sure. And I'm an astronaut," he said, laughing. My father was even more direct. "Son, this woman is worth it. You can tell." 4 months after the breakup, I was working on a custom bike when the phone rang. Unknown number, but I answered. Sometimes clients call from random numbers. "Nick, it's me, Eleanor." She was sobbing on the other end. My first impulse was to hang up. We had nothing left to say, but something in her voice made me wait. "How did you get this number? Please don't hang up. I need to talk to you." She had convinced Roy to give it to her. She went to the shop crying, claiming it was an emergency. It turned out she had made a mistake and needed to come back into my life. She was pregnant. Trevor had disappeared, and she had nothing left. She told me he had used her, promised her eternal love, convinced her to leave me, and then took off as soon as he found out about the pregnancy. He went to Denver without telling anyone. He was offered a transfer at his company and accepted it immediately. He only told her 2 days before leaving. "Call your friends, the ones who kept saying you were better than me. They don't talk to me anymore. Now they think I was an idiot for leaving you for Trevor." On that, at least, we agreed. She begged me for another chance. She offered to go to therapy, sign agreements, whatever I wanted. "Nick, I love you. I understood that when I lost you." "No. You understood it when they left you pregnant and alone." I cut the call and blocked the number, but she didn't stop. She started showing up at the shop, crying in the parking lot, repeating that she was sorry. It wasn't just uncomfortable. It was starting to affect the business, and more than anything, my peace of mind. I ignored her first attempt at contact. On the second occasion, I asked Roy to make it clear she wasn't welcome. By the third time, I had my phone in hand and started taking photos of her. It was then that I decided to file a restraining order. The look on her face when the sheriff served her was priceless, a mix of surprise and confusion. She didn't understand that her actions had consequences, that repeatedly showing up at someone's workplace after being rejected bordered on illegal. 6 months later, I was with Julia at a motorcycle rally in Sturgis when I received a message from an unknown number. The text included an image. When I opened it, I saw Eleanor, visibly pregnant, working behind the counter of a fast food franchise. The message said, "Thought you'd want to know how your ex is doing. Karma doesn't forgive." It was probably sent by one of her former bridesmaids, someone who got tired of the drama after the scandal with Trevor. Eleanor had made a lot of enemies because of the decision she made. But seeing that image, I didn't feel satisfaction. The only thing it generated was the certainty that I had avoided a disaster of gigantic proportions. She looked exhausted, swollen, trapped in a polyester uniform while serving all kinds of cranky customers. Julia, seeing the photo, just raised an eyebrow and commented without emotion. "That's a shame, but if you ruin your life for the wrong person, what do you expect?" Not a trace of drama, jealousy, or comparison. Trevor never returned to Austin. According to mutual acquaintances, he was transferred to the London office shortly after moving to Denver. Mackenzie probably relocated him to clean up the mess he left. Consulting firms don't tolerate personal scandals that could affect their reputation. Much simpler to send him overseas where no one knows the pregnant ex-girlfriend he left behind. Eleanor's parents withdrew their financial support as soon as the scandal became public. They cared more about what people would say than their daughter's well-being. That's how wealthy families are. Image is above all else. After the photo of her at the restaurant began circulating, her social media disappeared. The posts about toxic masculinity were over. Only silence remained, and probably a mountain of regret. The last I heard of her, she was living in an apartment complex on the south side of the city, working double shifts to cover the baby's expenses. The BMW was repossessed, the designer clothes sold, the exclusive club membership canceled. Meanwhile, Julia and I were in a formal relationship. She moved into my house. She feels at home in the shop. She gets along well with the guys on the team. And she's fascinated by custom motorcycles. She's even started planning how to convert part of the garage into a workshop for restoring antique furniture. My father loves her too. This girl is down to earth and knows what she wants. She helps you grow without changing who you are, he told me. And I couldn't agree more. There are people who honestly remove themselves from your life. Call me old-fashioned, but I don't believe in building a life with someone who is still living as if they're on an eternal vacation with their friends. If that's insecurity, I prefer it 1,000 times over stupidity. Now, community, what would you all do in my place? Open question for everyone, huh? I thought my story was over, Reddit, but the universe had other plans, so I'm back with a new installment. This time, courtesy of our favorite executive-level Ken doll, also known as Trevor. Prepare yourselves. A couple of months after filing the restraining order, I was delivering a custom Ducati to a tech executive in Westlake Hills. A beauty. 2018 Panigale V4 model. Special paint, modified suspension, full exhaust system. The client paid in cash. No questions asked. While we were reviewing the delivery details, the guy mentioned he was flying to London for meetings with a consulting firm. A bunch of pretentious kids who think they know everything because they went to expensive schools, he commented. And that's when he dropped a name that caught my full attention. There's one guy who thinks he's the reincarnation of success. Trevor Morrison. Apparently, he was just as arrogant and useless in London as he was here. According to my client, every suggestion Trevor made resulted in losses for the company. A classic. Lots of talk, little action. Doing a bit of research on LinkedIn that night, I saw that Trevor wouldn't stop posting about his transformative phase in London and his commitment to excellence, but his Instagram contradicted it. Parties, drinks, and dates with British women. All while Eleanor, pregnant, worked double shifts to make ends meet. I decided to write the most professional email of my life to Human Resources at Mackenzie London. I told them that one of their consultants had impregnated a woman in Austin after breaking off her engagement and then disappeared. I attached screenshots of his nightclub parties while she was working to survive. I merely hinted that perhaps this didn't align with their values of integrity and corporate responsibility. But I didn't stop there. I found Trevor's parents on social media, William and Nicole Morrison, an elite real estate family from Dallas, proud, reputation-obsessed. I tracked down Martha, a former college classmate of Nicole's, who now volunteers at a center for single mothers in Austin. It turns out I casually ran into her at the local market and told her about a young mother who had been abandoned by a wealthy Dallas boy named Trevor Morrison. Martha was horrified. Nicole's son, my goodness. She always talks about how successful and decent he is. She said she would call Nicole. 3 weeks later, I received a call from a regular client. He wanted to order another bike. In the middle of the conversation, he mentioned, "Remember that Trevor guy from Mackenzie? He was pulled from London and sent back to Dallas. Something about family pressure and problems with HR." During our video call, Trevor looked miserable. His Instagram said it all. The nightclub photos disappeared. The latest post was a boring picture in a generic Dallas building with a caption, "Excited for this new chapter." The comments were devastating. Friends from London asking what happened, relatives from Dallas feigning support. Someone even tagged Eleanor asking if he was the baby's father, which unleashed a chain of comments that revealed the whole story. Martha didn't just call Nicole. She organized a Garden Park ladies' intervention, mobilized all her friends, and turned it into a community matter. Nicole, dying of shame, forced Trevor to return immediately. Not only did she make him resign from Mackenzie, she also put him to work at the family real estate business, earning much less. And most importantly, she made him create a trust fund for Eleanor and the baby, all to avoid further scandal. That fund was the icing on the cake. Trevor went from a 6-figure salary to working under surveillance at the family business, paying monthly to the woman he had tried to ignore. Thanks to that fund, Eleanor receives more than she was earning serving burgers. Plus, she now has medical coverage. I didn't have to lift a finger or resort to confrontation. I just let karma work its way through LinkedIn and a group of outraged mothers. And never forget, if you ever hear the phrase, "We're just friends," smile, nod, and start saving evidence. Thanks, Reddit.